Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I wanted to talk about some videos that I was just watching today, looking at what Trump plans to do with his upcoming administration in 2 months. There's some really good ideas. I'm on the Agenda 47 website. It's Trump's website that just shows a lot of videos of his policy positions and plans that he wants to do. There's some super exciting things that he talks about that really no one has talked about, at least in my lifetime, as a president. So I'm really optimistic about what he would accomplish here. And if he does half of these things that he talks about doing, it's going to be probably the best presidency in anyone that's alive right now. It's probably going to be their best presidency in your lifetime. Let's take a look.
For 200 years under our system of government, it was undisputed that the president had the constitutional power to stop unnecessary spending through what is known as impoundment. Very simply, this meant that if Congress provided more funding than was needed to run the government, the president could refuse to waste the extra funds and instead return the money to the general treasury and maybe even lower your taxes, although we did give you the biggest tax reduction in history and the biggest regulation reduction in history, two things I'm very proud of. And they still are there, although they're disappearing rapidly under Biden. Thomas Jefferson famously used this power, as did many other presidents, until it was wrongfully curtailed by the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. Not a very good act. This disaster of a law is clearly unconstitutional, a blatant violation of the separation of powers. When I return to the White House, I will do everything I can to challenge the Impoundment Control Act in court and, if necessary, get Congress to overturn it. We will overturn it. I will then use the president's long-recognized impoundment power to squeeze the bloated federal bureaucracy for massive savings. This will be in the form of tax reductions for you. This will help quickly to stop inflation and slash the deficit. To prepare for this eventuality, on day one, I will order every federal agency to begin identifying large chunks of their budgets that can be saved through efficiencies and waste reduction using impoundment. Of course, this will not include national defense, and unlike Ron DeSanctimonious, who
All right, so that one's a little bit old. So he was talking about that before the primary was even over. That's why he was bringing up Ron DeSantis. But anyways, that was one of the best, speeches or clips I've seen come from a politician, because I love that idea. No one talks about it. No one wants to, ruffle those feathers of the people in the bureaucracy. But it's something that needs to happen. There's so much waste and abuse that's happening by our government, and just they have no regard for how hard the taxpayers have to work for that money. We spend, what, 3 or 4 months out of the year working just to pay our tax burden, even as middle class Americans, working that much just for them to waste it on these pointless things, and to pay the salaries for these government employees that really don't even do anything. So I'm loving this. This is, coming to fruition now with Elon Musk and with Vivek, the Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm loving it. I really want Trump, to be the head of that. I want Vivek and Musk to bring people to him, and I want to have it like a reality show. Let's have it be the government apprentice, and Trump just goes, "You're fired." So yes, I love this. Let's go ahead and look at the next thing that I think is one of his biggest policy positions that's really going to benefit people.
World War III has never been closer than it is right now. We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America last globalists and the deep state, the Pentagon, the State Department, and the national security industrial complex. One of the reasons I was the only president in generations who didn't start a war is that I was the only president who rejected the catastrophic advice of many of Washington's generals, bureaucrats, and the so-called diplomats who only know how to get us into conflict, but they don't know how to get us out. For decades, we've had the very same people, such as Victoria Nuland and many others just like her, obsessed with pushing Ukraine toward NATO, not to mention the State Department support for uprisings in Ukraine. These people have been seeking confrontation for a long time, much like the case in Iraq and other parts of the world, and now we're teetering on the brink of World War III. And a lot of people don't see it, but I see it, and I've been right about a lot of things. They all say Trump's been right about everything. None of this excuses in any way the outrageous and horrible invasion of Ukraine 1 year ago, which would have never happened if I was your president, not even a little chance. But it does mean that here in America, we need to get rid of the corrupt globalist establishment that has botched every major foreign policy decision for decades. And that includes President Biden, whose own people said he's never made a good decision when it comes to looking at other countries and looking at wars. We have to replace them with people who support American interests. Over our 4 years in the White House, we made incredible progress in putting the America Last contingent aside and bringing the world to peace. And now we're going to complete the mission. The State Department, Pentagon, and national security establishment will be a very different place by the end of my administration. In fact, just into my administration, it'll be a very different place, and it'll get things done, just like I did 4 years ago.
Yes, this is something we have needed for a long time. Do you remember when Joe Biden first won the presidency and all the corporate media was saying, yes, the adults are back in charge finally? And it wasn't before too long that we realized that indeed the adults were not in charge finally, and Joe Biden was senile, as I knew. Half the country, I feel like, knew that Joe Biden was senile, but the corporate media hid it, and the big tech agencies, we didn't have X back then, so we've gotten a lot more, I guess, more free speech and better public discourse, since 2020. And, they weren't serious people. It was like a hodgepodge of, equity hires. Kamala Harris, he said, I don't know who I'm going to pick as my vice president, but it's going to be a black woman. It's like, okay, so you just put, like, how much of the population is that? That's like 7% of the country. You're going to pick one person from 7% of the country instead of just having an open choice of picking anyone of 100% of the most qualified people. You're going to just pick someone within a 7% subgroup of the most qualified people. Sounds like a dumb idea. And it turned out to be so. And then, she wasn't a serious person. Like, all she did as vice president was invite transgendered people to the White House and be awkward with them. And then everybody else, like, he had the guy with the bald head and the cherry red lipstick that got fired because he was stealing. Didn't he steal some woman's luggage? I guess because he wanted some more ladies' clothes to wear. I don't know. But yeah, it was not serious people. And Joy Reid just said this week, Donald Trump is filling up the clown car. Joy Reid, where have you been the past 4 years? If Trump is filling up a clown car, what the heck was that? So, yeah, it's nice to see the actual adults in charge. And Trump, he puts people he holds people to a lot of scrutiny and to a very high standard. He holds himself to a high standard, and he wants the people around him and his administration to be held to a high standard. It's probably why he had so many tell-all books coming out about people would come up with these stories about things that he said, and apparently there was, he would have been around other people, and no one else would corroborate those stories. Like the one lady had that crazy story about January 6th, him trying to lunge over and grab the steering wheel in the presidential limo to try and steer the car to the Capitol or whatever. It's like there's a partition there that's not physically possible. What did he do? Did he phase through the partition to grab the steering wheel? And it's nonsense. And it's nice to see, someone serious that's going to take these people on. We've never had someone serious about this and willing to talk about this, because I think these people knew that, if you take on the deep state, they will ruin you. And they've already tried to ruin Trump before. We saw the FBI trying to frame him as a Russian asset for 4 years, and then that came up to all be bogus and just a complete fake, story that Hillary Clinton's campaign paid for to, who was it? The Steele dossier, the British agent guy. So yeah, this is what we needed, and the war in Ukraine probably never would have happened if the adults had been in charge this whole time, because Biden's administration completely screwed that up. You want to go ahead and withdraw from Afghanistan in the middle of the capital city? Why don't you just stay in Bagram? It's nothing but desert around it. You can defend it so much easier. You have checkpoints set up far away from the base so that it's not just a freaking flood of humanity right up against the walls of the airport, like they had, in the capital city of Afghanistan. And all those people died because of Biden's incompetence, and no one lost their job. When Trump was president, he says all the time, people were fired. It's probably why all these deep state people hated him, because they were getting fired or their friends were getting fired, and he said mean things. But anyways, let's go ahead and get on to the next and last video I want to show you.
The United States spends more money on education than any other country in the world, and yet we get the worst outcomes. We're at the bottom of every list. In total, American society pours more than $1 trillion a year into public education systems. But instead of being at the top of the list, we are literally right smack, guess what, at the bottom. Rather than indoctrinating young people with inappropriate racial, sexual, and political material, which is what we're doing now, our schools must be totally refocused to prepare our children to succeed in the world of work and in life and the world of keeping our country strong, so they can grow up to be happy, prosperous, and independent citizens. We owe our children great schools that lead to great jobs and leads to an even greater country that we're living in right now. Right now, we're living in a failing nation because of Joe Biden and these people running it. They're Marxists, they're communists. What they're doing to our country is incredible, but we'll take care of that for our children. Here are 10 key ideas that will power our movement for great schools. First, we will respect the right of parents to control the education of their children. Second, we will empower parents and local school board to hire and reward great principals and teachers, and also to fire the poor ones, the one whose performance is unsatisfactory, they will be fired. Like on The Apprentice, you're fired. Third, we will ensure our classrooms are focused not on political indoctrination, but on teaching the knowledge and skills needed to succeed. Reading, writing, math, science, arithmetic, and other truly useful subjects. Fourth, we will teach students to love their country, not to hate their country like they're taught right now. Fifth, we will support bringing back prayer to our schools. Sixth, we will achieve schools that are safe, secure, and drug free, with immediate expulsion for any student who harms a teacher or another student. Seventh, we will give all parents the right to choose another school for their children if they want. It's called school choice. Eighth, we will ensure students have access to project-based learning experiences inside the classroom to help train them for meaningful work outside the classroom. Ninth, we will strive to give all students access to internships and work experiences that can set them on a path to their first job. They're going to be very, very successful. I want them to be more successful than Trump. Let them go out and be more successful. I will be the happiest person in the world. But we want our children to have a great life and be successful. And 10th, we will ensure that all schools provide excellent jobs and career counseling so that high school and college students can get a head start on jobs and careers best suited to their God-given talents. This is how we will ensure a great education for every American child. And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place, and you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states. Thank you very much.
Yes, we need that so bad. It's so ridiculous how powerful the teachers' unions in this country are, where their entire focus is, to protect teachers and keep them, gainfully employed. When these people are abysmal at their job, and you'll have these teachers that will do inappropriate things with students, things that they should be in jail for, and then they can't fire those teachers, so the teachers and they can't have those teachers teaching students either because they did these things that they should be in jail for. So they take those teachers and they'll just stick them in a room and they just make them sit there and they're still collecting a paycheck. It's ridiculous. And we could teach our kids useful things and, how to balance a budget and consumer economics and, civics, why our country was founded the way it is and explain, the Constitution and things. They don't do any of that anymore. Our kids are barely literate and, all the way up till they graduate. And we're just throwing so much money at the problem, but not actually fixing any of these things. And anytime you have a bloated bureaucracy, in the capital of DC, it's not going to be as efficient as if you let the states handle it. Because, our states are drastically different. Our founding fathers never planned for the federal government to be this giant leviathan with its tentacles interwoven in every aspect of everyone's life, because they knew that couldn't work, and it's not working, clearly. So this is just super refreshing to see someone take this issue on and all these other issues on. I feel like everyone every other politician hasn't wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole because they know it's like the third way rail. If you touch that, your career is over and you're never going to get elected. Well, Trump came out of nowhere and got elected because he hears what the people want and he actually stands up and will voice these concerns that and say these things that we've all wanted forever. But it's super exciting for me. I can't, if he does half of what he's talking about doing in this administration, he's going to go down as the best president probably since Calvin Coolidge. And I can't wait for it to start, in 2 months. But if you guys enjoyed this video and like my content, please like and subscribe and share the show with your friends. Thank you.